All right, welcome to the Insecure Agents podcast. My name is Allie Howe, and I'm here with Cailyn Yong, founder of Momo. Cailyn is in Founders Inc. with me, and that's where we're shooting today. Cailyn, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your work?
Hi, I'm Cailyn. I'm building Momo. Momo is a web app that keeps track of what teams are working on every day by building a company memory, and also integrating with your most used apps like Gmail, Slack, Notion, GitHub, etc. Yeah.
Amazing. That's super cool. I've been seeing you blowing up all over Twitter. So it seems like Momo, is like gathering so much steam, which is so exciting. I know we both started Artifact, this program at Founders Inc. like 3 weeks ago. What sort of follower count or metrics did you come in with, and what does that look like now? Because I feel like you've just completely taken it away.
So start of Artifact, I already had a couple of followers, not a couple, but like I had like 3,500 because I sort of went viral with the previous post that I uploaded before. It wasn't related to the product though. And then I launched last Thursday, and that post went pretty viral. It got 1,000 likes and then 67K views. And then that sort of also increased my follower count to now 4.8K. And then I launched another video this Monday. Then that did better than the first one. So that got around like 1.4K likes, and then it had generated 120K impressions-ish.
That's super exciting. Huge congrats. That's super cool. I know like the field of personal agents is really sort of like taking off in notoriety because of like the Claude bot thing that just happened. Yeah. Do you feel like that's sort of added to the momentum?
Yes, I intentionally chose that to ride that momentum. My marketing tactic was like Claude bot for teams, and then that sort of took off. But the thing is, like, I think personally assistants have been taking off since last year, and there's been a lot of teams that have went really viral on X, for example, like Poke. Everyone used it, tried it. There's been so many similar tools to personal assistants, like texting your agent over WhatsApp or Telegram. Like there's been so many use cases. I can't even like list them because I can think of like 5 teams at least that have been building on that. And I was also one of the teams that were building personal assistants before I pivoted to what I'm building right now. So it's been like a year journey for me now. And then I knew there were some like set limitations to building personal assistants. I also have like a lot to say about that, but like personal assistants go really viral because it spurs a lot of like curiosity. Like you're very interested in like, oh, you can actually just like talk and text with the agents and they'll do everything for you. You don't need to go to the calendar or whatever. So at first glance, it looks like really cool. But then after a few days, people start to drop out. They don't use it, and they stop using it. I think one of the main problems with personal assistants right now is like retention and trying to grab people to make it a daily habit of like using it every day. I'm sure there are power users, but yeah, if there are not like the right use cases or if it's very difficult to install, then I think like that's where a lot of people drop off. And start not to use it. That's also why I decided to pivot to a larger problem, like company memory.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, that's super cool. Is it challenging to sell this type of product like to companies versus consumers that maybe have like less security concerns?
So right now I'm targeting teams, and then the marketing is Cloudbot for teams. But the people that have like signed up on the platform and started using it are actually using it for more personal use. So now I'm like, should I change my marketing? Should I also like tailor to personal needs right now? So that's something that I'm thinking, because I feel like if you want to onboard teams, you also need to convince the individual user first in order for them to invite their teammates. So I'm trying to get really good at these specific use cases where one person might use it like really well for themselves, and then that convinces them enough to invite other teammates onto their team.
That makes sense. I think what happens with personal agents, if I was to assume, is that they're so powerful. There's so many things that they can do, and so maybe users get like overwhelmed and not sure what to do.
Yeah, I think that's one of the issues with Cloudbot or like personal assistants is that you can connect to so many tools and there's so many stuff that you can do, and there's too much liberty on what you can do. So people don't really know what they need to do next. Also, if you're non-technical, then that's another like barrier that you have to come across. You can't I can't imagine my mom like installing MCPs on Cloudbot. Like she's never going to do that. So it's really about the user experience. And then getting the right like target audience and getting the right specific use cases for them to use and setting up a template for them so that they can just use it without having to set up everything. So for Momo, I specifically chose the work, like teamwork area, because I knew that when you're given too much liberty, you don't really know what to do. So I'm targeting people to just like connect anything about their work decisions. So it's going to be really focused on their work, their business, not like personal life or like whatever, just like the things that you did today, the work that you did today, and then also for the teammates as well, so that you guys can just focus on the company memory, not like all the other stuff that are like buzzing off.
Yeah, and like memory is such a hard problem to tackle from like both an engineering standpoint and also security, because like once your memory context is poisoned, if you've got untrusted content that's coming into like the memory, that can create a whole bunch of like issues with like prompt injection and stuff. But also like long running stateful agents having memory over time. Now you're getting into problems like compaction and stateful agents, and what are those engineering challenges like, and how are you solving them?
Well, one of the main challenges right now is that I'm building a self-evolving memory. So once you connect your Gmail, GitHub, or Slack, they intake all the work decisions that you've made within the platform. And it starts adding the memory nodes onto the memory graph that is built. The thing is, like, after a couple of weeks, you might not really need the outdated data. So it also needs to auto purge the old data, or it needs to update the old data. For example, if I was working on project A and then now the team is working on project B, then like, and if they are two connected, project A needs to be updated so that it can refer to project B. But because this is all, like, I'm trying to build this like auto evolving, those kind of stuff are pretty hard when you need to set up all the logic for it and how to update or how to delete the irrelevant sources. And everyone has different thoughts on what's important for them. And when it becomes a shared memory, then that also needs to take care of like the blockers, what's more important, what's less important, those kinds of stuff. So that's like one main thing that's difficult to solve in terms of learning.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. How is Momo similar or different than Claude? Like, what can it do that Claude can't?
I think the main difference is that you can build a shared team workspace and shared team memory. For Claude right now, it does have memory, but it's not like installed with it. You have to manually add the memories, or you have to install MCPs to keep track of those memories. But for Momo, how it works is that it automatically keeps track of those memories and then it builds it for yourself. So that's like one thing. And then once you have your specific own individual like team work memory set up, you can share it with your other team members. So that's the biggest difference. So that you can just like, yeah, I think sharing itself is the biggest difference.
That's really cool. I was also wondering, how are you thinking about AI security? Have you seen anything like prompt injections come through or faced any sort of challenges like that?
Yeah, this has been an ongoing challenge that I've been dealing with for the past year. So right after I launched Momo last Thursday, there were a couple of attempts for prompt injection, and they were kind enough to tell me that they tried it out and then it failed. So I guess like Momo successfully prevented it from happening. That's because mainly like I knew that this would happen, and I put up some like safety guardrails so that they wouldn't be like allowed to do the prompt injection techniques. There's also some well-known prompt injection techniques that are on the internet, so you can just like scrape them and then train it to the LLM, or filter them out through like text classification before it even runs through the LLM, so that it just like blocks it and it never runs. So that's like one way I'm doing it. The other thing is like database. You need to secure your database a lot. If you don't put up the security levels, like anyone with the public adding key or the public URL key can see or like retrieve other people's data within the database. So you need to put up the right like security guardrails for that as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sounds like you're doing all the right things. That's amazing. Also that happened like so soon.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people I talk to think like, oh, like this will like never happen to me, or like people aren't, smart enough to be like, doing AI exploits and stuff. And it's like, no, like it's happening.
Yeah.
If you want to run like an agent like in production or like build in public, like you should expect it. So super cool that you were able to tackle that. One thing I was seeing with like the Claude bot that was happening was like the skills hub they built for it. Someone made this skill, what would Elon do? I think it was called, and they like hacked the skills hub such that their skill showed the most number of downloads. They just like put like a photo or something on to like give it the most. And
I see. Okay.
and that's like one of the ways like we as users trust like okay, like can I download this MCP?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Can I use this skill?
Yeah.
Can I even use this like NPM package? Just like which one has the most downloads? But if you can like hack that or get away around that, that's like the easiest way to like exploit like a user.
Even like MCPs, they're not fully secured, and you can't really know if they're secured or not. So you also need to be really careful about installing all these MCPs on the Claude bot and giving just access to everything about your local files and everything. So there's a big like security risk to downloading all of that.
Is it a feature in Momo to be able to like share skills or connect things to Momo, or how are you thinking about that for your product?
No, not yet. One of the people in the comments have asked me if they could just like hook up some API webhooks, and then like, extract it. The thing is like right now, first of all, like I don't trust MCPs and I don't really want to use MCPs to build memories because right now in Momo we have our own like memory extraction logic and layer, so it doesn't really make sense to use MCPs to forward that. And then what I was trying to say is that for each like app that you're connecting, there's a different logic to how it's being extracted. So I'm thinking like if for me to scale, it would probably be really fast to just like hook up like Zapier or like those like webhooks or MCPs, but I just wanted to make sure that the quality of the memory extraction is right for each individual app. So right now I decided not to go down that path and just like work on the main apps that people want and then just get the memory extraction logic really right for each of those. And then see if we can scale from there.
That's a good plan. I'm always nervous to like install MCP servers myself for like, the same reason. I know there's like various like MCP scanners out there on the market today to help you find things like tool misuse and stuff and rug pulls and all that. But yeah, definitely it's like a huge like a wallet build. And it's like you don't need the MCP server, and especially if you don't need all the tools that come with it.
I get like it's super easy to just build the tools instead of having to like install an MCP again and then use those tools, because I hate installing MCPs and they're such a pain in the ass. It's like really hard to onboard.
Have you thought about using like coding agents to like create like the APIs connections like to like the Zapier API, for example, and like using code execution instead of an MCP server?
Yes, I've thought about it, but then you also have to pay for Zapier, so I was like, I'll just build it myself.
There you go. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean the cost of like code creation these days is so small. We're creating more code than we ever have because of AI.
Exactly.
But we also have like a code review problem because it's so easy to create all this code. And even as, you know, I think both of our teams for our companies are very small. Like even given the small size, the amount of code that our teams are generating is huge. And so I think one of the best ways to help with that code generation problem is like creating like architecture diagrams and being able to say, okay, like given the new code, where does the largest like security concerns lie? How is this going to change my architecture and potentially the way the agent's deployed? Is there different pipelines or anything you've built in your workflow to be able to help with that code generation problem?
Yeah, for us, we really need to keep track of all the pipelines that are happening behind the memory layer logic. We want to know like how the decisions are first being extracted, and then how it's being updated to the memory graph, and then if it's correct or not, and if it's being encrypted, for example. So there's a lot of steps that go through before the memory graph itself is created when you first connect an app. So we needed to keep track of all of that process. So for us internally, we built a pipeline diagram to show how these steps work. And then we were keeping track of that. The token cost, whatever, like anything that you need to keep track of. And then,
Okay. Yeah. Nice. That's awesome. And I know right before this we had you try my tool, Verde, which creates architecture diagrams, and it labels where the lethal trifecta exists within your architecture diagram, so you can start to understand like how do I keep the different pillars of the lethal trifecta, private data, external communication, and untrusted content away from each other, such that you prevent AI exploits. What was that process like for you? And is that diagram, was that helpful? How is that different or similar to the diagrams you create in pipelines?
I think it is helpful because just today, what I was gonna do was go through each of the apps that I'm connecting to Momo and see if they're being properly encrypted, if there's any security leaks, if there might be any vulnerabilities for prompt injection or hacking, those kind of stuff. So I think it might be helpful for me if I could, extract like individual pipeline diagrams of each of those apps, like each of the functions, because I think for the entire diagram of what's happening, I probably know what's happening, but for like the specific functions of what's like happening inside, I would like to see a more like specific view on that. But the diagram itself is, it gives like a really clear view of what's happening and what kind of security risks that I might have, which I'm dealing with all, by the way. So yeah, it really helps. Yeah.
Super cool. Yeah, that's great to hear. And yeah, so that'd be super cool to like zoom in to like different parts of the diagram and like more.
And then see like what's happening within like each of those. Like,
yeah, that'd be super cool. What is next for Momo?
Good question. So I watched The Social Network 2 days ago, and then it got me really thinking, what should I do to make the next like billion-dollar company? What are the right decisions? And I've been just like thinking about this every single day. What are the right decisions I need to make right now in order to progress like further and like make bigger dreams and bigger outputs? So right now, I haven't like really finalized this yet, but if you think about Slack or Notion, it's really about Slack one-liner is how teams communicate. Notion is for how teams keep records of their documents. So for Momo, I think I also want to do where Momo is like a workspace where it shows how decisions are made and evolved over time. So it's sort of like a truth layer that you check every time when you start work. So before even like hopping onto Slack or Notion or any of the workspace tools that you use, you just like check this first and see what's just happening overall in your team and your company, the sales progress, the product progress, and then you get a overview of what's happening within your day, within your week, and within your company, and you move on to the next applications. I think like that's something that I want to build, just like something that everyone uses every single day. So I'm like thinking in those lines. Not sure if I have a great like one-liner for this yet, though.
I think that plan is amazing. It'll be super cool to see this get plugged into more people's like workflows. And I think it'll just be this viral thing of like, oh, you know, I'm user X. And like I posted about how this, you know, one workflow, this one use case saved me so much time every day. I can't imagine my life now without this personal assistant. Yeah. Once that like catches on, it's just gonna go like wildfire.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of issues with like Slack as well. Like there's like too many communications that are happening and then people just can't keep track of like what's happening and what they need to see or what they forgot to reply. That's also something that I'm interested in because Momo keeps track of like all the decisions that were made within Slack, and then you can keep track of that within like time periods and also by which team member made that decision. So I think it might be pretty interesting to see how this plays out. Maybe it could be a new version of Slack or AI native Slack. But I think like, there could be like so many different ways that this could go right now. It could also be like a new AI native like Salesforce if it keeps track of the client's memories. So there's, like I'm trying to like put my foot on like what's the next step to take. Yeah.
Well, I've got absolutely no doubt that you will figure it out. You are absolutely on fire. Like, you're a huge inspiration to me, honestly. Super cool to see that this is taking off so much. And thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to tell us more about Momo and the security challenges and what it's like to actually build an agent, take it from a proof of concept and actually ship it and actually make it work. It's a huge difference there. I hope we chat again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.